Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass and the world is too full to talk about, ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make sense. Hi everyone. Today I speak to Frank. It feels as if Frank kind of snuck into my life. I'm not sure when I got to know him, but I was suddenly aware of his quiet and serious presence. Over time, the quietness has slowly been changed, and his presence was felt more clearly. Frank is one of those quiet people who gets things done. I have seen that in action and really appreciate this side of him. What intrigued me right from the start was that he refers to himself as a Christ follower and not as a Christian. I knew there and then that Meet Me in the Field needs to hear about his path. It took me a while before I felt comfortable enough to ask him to come and talk to us. But I'm very happy that he agreed and excited to share his journey with you. This podcast is supported by the First Layer, the 12-step workbook on working through the 12 steps in any addiction in 21 sessions. There's also a 24-day step coaching and counseling program available based on the First Layer. For more information in this regard, go to www.freddy.org.za and click through from the notices at the right of the homepage. Sit back and enjoy. Good afternoon, Frank. How are you doing?
Wow, doing well, thank you.
Good.
Freddie. And,
I'm very glad to hear that.
Very glad to be here and to be able to share some of my life experiences and growth.
I am very happy to have you here. And isn't it a beautiful day to have a chat like this?
Absolutely.
I was a real housewife today. I looked at the weather and said, I need to do washing. And I went out early to feel the washing's not dry yet. And he said, sun's going to set soon, so I don't know what to do. A house person's conundrum.
Yeah, it sounds like we're very much in the same boat, because I also did the laundry this morning. And I also hung it outside, and it's also not totally dry. So the dryer is going to do some work.
Oh, you have that, do you? Privilege.
In the complex.
Okay, cool. No, we don't have that. So here we are at Meet Me in the Field, and thank you very much. And I'm glad I remembered to give you your little thank you gift. I constantly forget to give it to people. I asked you because the way I look at it, you have I don't know whether I want to call it interesting, but it's for me slightly off-center take on spirituality. And why do I say that? I don't know. What I pick up from you is a deeply committed person to your sense of spirituality, but you're also very committed to your sense of spirituality. So let's start at the beginning. Where did your spirituality form? Okay. Where were you introduced to it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Freddie, for your perspective. And yeah, I think you have an accurate perspective. So actually my spirituality started from when I can remember. My mom was involved in Christian work, and my grandmother was involved in Christian work. And so when I went to boarding school in grade 1, first grade, into an English school, and without a word of English.
Oh my word.
So my first experiences of going to church were not very positive, because I was put into a certain congregation, and from the hostel we were always told, okay, you're going to that congregation, you're going to that church, you're going to that church. And then they would ask me, which church are you going to? I said, I don't know. And they said, okay, go to this one. And on one occasion, I walked into the church, and they said, no, all the kids go that way. Okay, we can follow the kids. Next thing I find myself standing on the stage. They had a concert. I'd never practiced, never even been to that church.
Oh my God.
And there I was standing, and I'm looking at all the other kids. Okay, now they've got to perform, and I just look and I try and do something.
Oh my word.
Embarrassment.
That's trauma. I hope you've dealt with that in trauma counseling in some way or another.
Oh no. But anyway, so my first experiences of church were not always very positive. But as I grew and adolescent, and then I started going to the congregation that I was supposed to go to, that my parents said I should go to. And there I started forming a spirituality. And the minister at that church was very gracious and working with the young people. And at one point I said, but I like this Christianity thing. It seems to be working. And but I hadn't made it my own yet.
Okay.
And I started going to another church at one stage. All through high school, primary school, I was quite isolated and very withdrawn because I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
Sometimes people don't experience me as an introvert, but I am. So at the dormitories on Sundays at the hostel in high school, kids would go to the different churches. And the one particular day I can remember, I think it was in 72 and I think it was in July, I was feeling very lonely, particularly lonely in the dormitories. And I was walking down this corridor. My feet were echoing in the corridor and that loneliness. I said, okay, let me go and see where my friends are. You know, go to their dormitory and 4 in a dormitory. Open the door, empty.
Oh my God.
And I said, oh, okay, they've probably gone to church. And at that point I said, Jesus, I want to follow you. And the guitar was lying on the bed, and so I started learning the guitar from a book that was also lying there. And yeah, from there my life started changing. I had a very typical...
So how old were you now about?
That's about 17.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about 17. And so my typical hostel language started changing to be more kosher, more pure and cleaner. And I used to have a terrible temper.
I can't see that. I definitely can't see you're somebody with terrible temper.
I had a terrible temper. One guy made me angry and he talked about something and he said, oh, what radio is that? Oh, I can't think of it. Beautiful little cassette radio, not a cassette player, but a radio with a leather covering that my father had given me. I take my dagger, and I break that radio and I throw it out the window just because he said, oh, that's a stupid radio.
Oh my word.
And another time somebody said something to me and I took the same dagger and I threw it at them. Fortunately, I didn't hit them. So that was the temper I had.
Good grief.
Another time somebody said, look at that picture you're drawing. What is that? I'm trying to draw a leopard. Take that book and I tear up all my drawings.
Oh my word.
So that was the temper I had. And okay, that took a while, maybe 4 months for that to go. However, I think that anger, because of what I'd experienced, turned inward. So there wasn't a model to me. How do I deal with my emotions? So my father was an alcoholic and my mother died when I was about almost 5 years old. So I lost her and I had a stepmom that was very critical and domineering. So all of that anger and that came out in the temper, I now turned inward. And so in that sense, my spirituality was good, but it was heading in the wrong direction because I was told to understand you don't get angry.
Yes.
So if you don't get angry, then you must suppress that anger. And suppressed anger becomes depression. And so that was what happened to me. I started getting depressed.
Okay.
And so that lasted throughout my high school. And then I went to Teachers Training College. I was there for 3 and a bit years, and I quit. Because
after 3 and a bit years, in your final year,
basically my final year,
I
quit.
God, okay, right.
We had military subscription.
Yeah.
So when I left high school, I could have made a choice to go for 1 year and do camps, or for 18 months and get a bonus, no camps, or 2 years and a bigger bonus and no camps. But my father got a letter from the Teachers Training College to say I'm accepted, and he said, no way, you're not going to do military service, you're going to study.
Okay.
And
did you want to become a teacher? Or was that something
that was
that's
something, what teachers interviewing, recruiting,
Yeah.
and what would I like? Oh, okay, that'll be okay. Actually, I did want to become a teacher,
Okay.
but never thought I really could.
Okay.
So, according to my father, or to try and please my father, because that was another thing, I felt I had to perform. So that was also something that came through my spirituality or my religiosity. I'd
Okay.
rather call it religiosity because that's what it was.
Yep.
Was to perform.
Cool.
So you just need to be a good guy, a good Christian. Don't swear, don't get angry, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. Do this, do this, do that, and then you're
Yeah.
a good spiritual Christian. So to please my father, who was not a Christian.
You're your father and your mother, so you have to do what your father says.
Yeah, basically to try and impress, try and gain his love. He and my brother, who was 12 years older than me, had a much more friendlier relationship, and they were quite similar. They had the same things. I was more withdrawn, and I was more sensitive, and I spoke less, and I didn't do the adventurous things that they did. And I was 12 years younger than my brother, so we weren't at the same
Yeah.
place.
Distant family.
In hindsight, I mean, at that stage as a kid, I didn't know it was totally dysfunction.
Yeah.
Alcoholic father, codependent mother,
Mhm.
codependent stepmother,
Oh, my
controlling, all those codependent things.
Yeah.
That, and then throw in the mix of religiosity.
God. Yeah.
And so after my during my teachers training college, they changed the subscription to 2 years compulsory and camps after.
Okay.
Very frustrated. So when I quit college, then I went to military, and I wanted to go to become a pilot, but because of the time I was away, my subscription changed, and they took me to some administration thing, and I said, no ways, I don't want to do that, and eventually I volunteered for the parabets. And,
Okay.
But in that time, my spirituality was still growing.
Okay.
And I was living a different life to some of the other guys, and I wasn't always part of what the other guys were saying, but of course there were still things that I was doing and thinking and that were not right.
Do you feel the odd one out?
Many times,
Yeah.
many times. Especially during military service, because the guys that I was subscribed with, that were with me, were often about 2 or 3 or 4 years younger than me.
Oh, yes.
Because I had gone to teachers training
Yeah.
college first.
Mm.
So I didn't feel accepted by them, and often I was isolated.
I say, it didn't do your isolation any good.
Nothing.
Because now you had
It just
direct reason,
perpetuated that. It perpetuated that. I think when the shift started was after I got married. Got married in '82, and we were at a particular congregation, and we started getting tired of the typical. It almost felt like a club. Let's go to church so that we can all feel that we're doing the right thing, and let's listen to the message that the pastor or the minister shares, and let's get out as soon as possible so that we can get to the braai and get to the food and get to do our other stuff.
And talk about other people in church.
And talk about other and gossip and so forth.
Invariably not saying good things about the other people in church. That was my feeling always as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we started getting tired of that.
Yeah.
And we had a sense that we don't want to continue playing religion.
Okay.
Because that is what we were busy doing.
Okay.
And that's what we sensed. And I think there a deeper change in our viewpoints came.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Were you in the army when you met her?
I was discharged from the army in 1980, the middle of 80 or the middle of 81.
Okay.
And I met I met her soon after
Okay.
that. Yeah, I met her soon after that. So it was probably 80, and I met her in 81. We got married in 82.
Okay.
Yeah, so my spiritual growth was there during the military service. But after we had got married and we had spent a few years together, we started making this shift. And so we want to stop playing religion.
Yeah.
And we felt at one stage, through a lot of confirmation, that we should be going full-time into ministry.
Okay.
And at that stage we said, we want to be missionaries. But in the meantime, I have almost come to detest the word missionary, because it gives a view, puts people in a certain box. And if you're called a missionary, then there are certain behaviors that you need to adhere to. You need to be the cream of the crop, and you mustn't be able to be broken, and you must sin a lot less than other people. And that is why, in the meantime, at that point I said, yes, that's a good thing. But in the meantime, I've come to realize people too easily, especially in the church, put you into the missionary box.
Yeah.
And I very intentionally have climbed out of that box.
Because when you said both your mother and your grandmother were in service, that's immediately the thought that came to mind.
Yeah.
So that whenever I hear somebody's in service of the Church of God, then that's the picture that I have, and that's a box that I have in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So religiosity was the foundation of you and your wife's meeting, and a very strong foundation of your relationship right from the start.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So we both professed to be Christians.
Cool.
And it was from that foundation that we said we want to be in a relationship as believers.
Good.
That stage I would say Christian. At this stage I would say Christ follower.
Yes.
Because
we're going to get to that, definitely.
We're going to get to that point as well. So that was our foundation. Actually, at one point, she's very extrovert. I'm a lot more introvert. And at the beginning of our marriage, I was actually asocial. Totally asocial, because of my upbringing and because of my background. And if I look back now, because of shame. And I'll share this with you. So my wife invites a group of people over to our apartment. We're going to visit. We're going to have dinner together, and then we'd be sitting at the bench, and they will talk and talk and talk. My wife's an extrovert, and talk, and eventually she says, "So, what do you think?" I wonder. I'll go and get that. I'm going to get something. And I'll go out the room. I come back with a nail clipper, and I start clipping my nails in the conversation.
Oh my word!
So that is how asocial I was. Totally introvert, totally unable to say what I feel, what I think even, and that is what carried through into my marriage, further into my marriage. And of course, that carried over to my spirituality, because I couldn't identify my feelings, and because I couldn't identify them, I couldn't express them, and I couldn't express them to God either.
Okay.
And so I'm not quite sure how I got to that point, but I was very asocial.
Thought. So if you couldn't feel the love, was it more an intellectual process for you?
Been loving my wife?
Loving for God.
Oh, loving God.
Yeah.
I think it was probably very intellectual, and at other times very, very deeply spiritual. In other words, I did feel things and I did experience things.
You just couldn't name them necessarily.
Thinking back, definitely had emotions, but I just couldn't say them.
Yeah.
So my wife asked me, after she had spilled her heart and said how she felt about something, she would say, "So what do you feel?
Oops, wrong answer.
I feel disappointed or sad.
Yeah.
What? What do you feel about what I said? I don't know.
Yeah.
But at least tell me, what do you think? I said, you know, the car's running out of petrol. We need to put in petrol tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning. Totally the wrong answer.
Oh, bzz, I hear the buzzer going up. Bzz, wrong answer. You are the weakest link.
Yeah. So that is where I was emotionally.
Okay.
And spiritually, and of course it grew a lot from there. And so I think getting back into, we felt a calling to go into ministry, and knowing that there are certain things that we should be looking at, and we went for counseling before we went into ministry, and we eventually landed abroad. And it's while we were abroad that some real deeper issues started being revealed and exposed.
Were you missionaries? What
Actually-
were you?
Actually, we were not missionaries.
Okay.
Because the country that we were going to, you're not allowed to be a missionary.
Okay.
So
You didn't have to fit into that box.
I didn't have to fit
And
into.
did you feel?
Yes.
Did you feel that you weren't fitting into the box,
Actually,
or did you kind of in the back of your mind think, "But I'm a missionary"?
no. In the back of our mind, we weren't missionaries.
Oh, cool.
We went to that country because we wanted to offer a service,
Okay.
and we were teaching English,
Okay.
and that was our service to those people that we were ministering to.
Okay.
And
cool.
our main focus was to love those people.
Okay.
We signed a contract to say that we would not participate in any religious activities, and that actually suited us.
Okay.
Because we don't want to be religious, so our focus was to create relationships, develop relationships.
Okay.
And if whoever we are forming that relationship with, whether it be with the students or with other people, we want them to see, but there's something different in us.
Yeah.
That we are loving them, and they are not just a number on a register.
Okay. So how does Frank, the introvert, slot into a new country?
Very difficult.
Is it? So it was,
It was-
you felt the challenge.
It was super difficult.
Okay. And your wife, was she comfortable? Her
It was also difficult for
Okay.
her. It was a lot easier for her because what we had to do is language studies, because you've got to buy things and
Yeah,
you've got
yeah.
to walk in the streets and you've got
Yes.
to speak to people. And she's a lot quicker because she's more vocal and
Okay.
she loves to communicate, even if it's wrong, but she will communicate.
Okay.
And me being the introvert, I don't want to make mistakes, and so I speak a lot less. So that was a big stress. And then going to a country not able to speak the language, not be able to read the signs, walking into a shop and you don't know how to buy sugar.
What the hell are you buying here?
Yeah, the labels are all different.
Yeah.
The packages is different. So it was very, very challenging. And so those brought the stresses. And the statistics say that when you enter a country that is so different to your own country, where you cannot express your faith freely, the stresses that you experience in that country can be 2 to 3 times higher than the highest stress you experience in your own country. So you can imagine experiencing those high stresses, and that is when the cracks that you had in your own country become gorgeous.
Yeah.
And that's when big problems were revealed in our relationship.
Okay.
And that is where we started saying, but we are broken people. No matter what we are doing, no matter how religious we are trying to be, how spiritual we are trying to be, and how hardworking we are trying to be in the field of spirituality, we are broken. And the thought and the idea of that brokenness was initially very academic, or shall I say cognitive.
Yeah.
And the further we started going into those issues, into those struggles, more and more we started realizing this we cannot sort by ourselves. God is not going to snap his fingers and take it away for us, because that is what I did. I prayed often and said, please take this away from me. I can't take it. Kill me, or take my eyes out, or make me deaf, or whatever.
Yeah.
But fortunately, he didn't answer those prayers.
So be careful what you pray for.
Very careful what you pray for. But he didn't answer those prayers. And I'm very grateful that he did not. Because he knew that I needed to go through a process. He knew my wife needed to go through a process. He knew that we as a couple need to go through a process of healing.
Did you feel abandoned? You're now in a strange country, alone. You don't have your support system, your normal friends, or all those type of things, and God's not doing for you what you would like him to do.
And I think that just contributed to the stress and to the isolation, the feeling of isolation and loneliness.
Sounds awful.
So because you're there as a spiritual worker, and there are other foreigners also there as spiritual workers, how can I go to them and say, I've got this massive problem? Because if I've got this massive problem, how can I be there? What am I doing there? I must get back to my own home country. So there was a lot of loneliness, isolation. As an individual,
judgment as well, judgment of self and fear of judgment.
Yeah, that's probably more so a fear of judgment than there that may really have been there.
False evidence appearing real. Fear.
Yeah. And so it was a very, very tough time. And we were there for 9 years.
Oh wow, it's a long time.
And the escalation or the revelation or the working at these issues of ours basically started abroad, and we carried that over when we came back to South Africa, and we are still continuing to work at those things. So in the meantime, my thought or my spirituality has really moved from religiosity to relationship, and particularly a relationship of love.
Okay.
And it sounds very quick. My spiritual journey really started in about 1972, and we are now in 2018.
Yeah.
And I'm still in the journey. I'm still changing, and I'm still learning some very serious things, or fun things sometimes. Learning to be joyful, for example.
Yes.
Because of our issues and our problems, there was just no chance that I could experience joy.
Yeah.
And because I was having issues, I said, how can God love me? If God cannot love me, I cannot love myself. Nobody else can love me. So those are the type of things that had to be sorted, in the sense that it had to sink to my heart and not just be a cognitive experience or a belief. God loves me. God cares for me. Yes, I know that. But do I really believe it deep in my heart?
Yeah.
So it had to move from the cognitive mind down into my heart.
The longest road we all travel is those 30 centimeters or however long that is. But a thought now came to my mind is, I've heard of, obviously a lot, I hear about spiritual journeys, because that's what we do here. But I don't know of a spiritual destination. So
okay, go ahead.
So what my thought process is, aren't we always journeying?
Yes.
Do we ever reach and say, now I have reached the pinnacle of, I can now sit and be spiritual?
I will always be on the journey until I breathe my last breath.
Yeah.
So in that sense, the journey never ends in this lifetime.
Cool.
So is there a destination? Yes, I do believe there is a destination. And for me, that destination is a perfect, intimate relationship, love relationship with God.
Okay.
With others, with myself, and total freedom. So that's the destination that my spirituality, I'd like my spirituality to move towards. So we are putting many things in place. We are studying books, we are journaling, we are talking, we are doing counseling with the specific goal of being in a loving union with God, with myself, with other people. And the most difficult is with my wife. To be in loving union with my wife, because she knows all my crap, I know all her crap, and we can easily trigger each other. So that is what we are busy working through at the moment.
Oh, I feel as if I'm going to be a counselor in this question, but I'm just asking because I find it interesting. What I'm hearing you doing is you're trying to find the emotion, the love, through a cognitive process. So what are you doing emotionally? Where's the emotional journey at this stage for you?
The emotional journey is becoming aware of my emotions.
Okay.
And so that was one of the things that one of my counselors told me. He said, you don't feel, or you do feel, but you don't know you feel.
Yeah.
And he gave me a tool, and he said, okay, I want you to record at least one event a week, and then go to two, and then go to as many as possible. And to say, during that event, what was a feeling that I experienced? Name them, give them a percentage. What were the automatic thoughts that I had because of those?
Okay.
What was my immediate reaction? And what would be the realistic response?
Okay.
And then, can I redo it? In other words, once I've gone through the process, I could identify feelings, I could see what my reaction was, what would be the appropriate response, and can I redo it? So if it was a situation with my wife, an incident with my wife, I could go back to her and say, can we redo that? And then say, this is what I felt.
Take two.
And this is how I reacted,
Yeah.
but I think this would be a better appropriate response.
Yeah.
And then to basically try and redo it.
Okay.
Of course, we cannot redo everything. So I became very aware of feelings.
Okay.
And during one of a recovery weekend that I attended in 2017, one counselor there who was at that recovery weekend was counseling me afterwards, and my wife. And he said, Frank, I see you are very aware of your emotions, but it's all logical.
Ah.
It's all generated in my cognitive.
Yeah.
In other words, if my wife says she's experiencing this and this and this, my logic says that means she must be sad. That means I should be sad as well.
Okay.
I say, wow, that really makes me sad.
Instead of actually feeling the sadness.
What he said then is, Frank, I want you to feel your feelings.
Yeah.
If you say you're sad, where do you feel you are sad?
Oh God, I hate that question.
Where do you feel? Do you really feel it? Then don't say you're sad until you feel it.
Yeah.
So if there's an emotion that you think you have or that you have identified, feel it first before you name it.
Okay. And how's that working? I wish you could see the face. This is when we need a video camera.
Ooh, no, it's...
So it's not an easy...
it's not
coming
easy
naturally.
It doesn't come naturally. To think that That was when I was in my late 50s, when that realization came from the logic to the actual feeling. So I'm in my 60s now, and I got to try and unlearn 50-something years
Oh my word, yeah.
of not feeling.
Yeah.
Or feeling but not knowing I'm feeling.
Mm.
Feeling, identifying feelings but not feeling them. So it is a difficult process.
I nearly get the sense of it doesn't matter how much progress you do, you're going to make how fast, it's just not going to be fast enough.
It's never fast enough, especially if you're in a committed relationship with somebody.
And is she a very feeling person? She
is very feeling orientated, so she can very easily say, I feel this and this and this and this and this makes me sad and sad and sad. And then being the person I am with my background and with my upbringing, I would make myself responsible for what she feels. But very often she would share what she does or what I did, and then go to what that makes her feel.
An I feel conversation.
Yeah, and then so we are busy working at that, because she would often speak about it. You do, I feel.
Yeah.
And now we are still busy working at I feel, when you da 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 da. And then I can respond and say, oh, I see you feel this, this, and this, and this. I'm really sorry that you felt that way, and when I did that, I'm sorry I did that. It was not right. And then I can also express my feelings. So we are busy working at that journey.
One of the biggest days of my life came when he was then my boyfriend, laughed at me when I said something. And he made me feel really stupid. And feeling stupid makes me feel inadequate, and it made me feel very sad. And it made me feel very angry at him. And I called my sponsor. And I blah, 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 cried over the phone. And his response was, so he made you feel that, did he? I said, yes. I said, I think you're choosing to feel that way. Can you maybe choose another feeling? And from that day, I'm so aware of somebody can't make you feel a certain way. They can trigger a feeling, but I have the choice whether I'm going to engage with that feeling or not, or hang on to that feeling rather. I think it's healthy to engage with the feeling, feel the feeling, but I don't have to hang on to it.
Yeah.
I can let it go and choose another response to that situation. And that was for me a very, very powerful part of my journey.
I think what has become important for me is to identify that feeling, to feel the feeling, and then to say, what generated that feeling? It wasn't the other person. Whatever they said, they actually didn't generate that feeling. That feeling was generated by something else. And more often than not, that feeling that I was experiencing, whether it be shame or whatever, inadequacy, stupidity, which I felt very often, is often generated by a wound. In other words, somewhere in my life I had experienced a wound that says, when that is said to you, when this is reflected to you, that is how you, that is what you are, and that is how you should be feeling, and then that feeling is generated. So it's actually not the other, something else that generates that feeling.
How much inner child work have you done?
Done quite a bit of inner child work. Yeah, so I've spoken to a number of counsellors, and we've been able to identify at which stages my child, I's little child, was abandoned or marginalized, set aside, and so forth. So we've done quite a bit of that work.
And most of your counseling work, is that in a spiritual context? If you understand what I'm trying to say. What am I saying? Because you get religious counselors, and you don't identify yourself necessarily as religious, though.
I hear what you are saying. many of the counselors that I've gone to have been spiritual people.
Okay.
They've been people of faith and that shared the same faith as what I have.
Okay.
And I'm very grateful, except for one counselor that expressed the same faith as what I did, but I doubt whether he really does. I'll talk about him just now. So most of them are spiritual with the same beliefs as I have, and they are non-judgmental, and they are real counselors, and they recognize the psyche, they recognize the spirituality, and they recognize that both of them are part of my holistic being.
Yeah.
Physical, emotional, psychological. I'm a whole being, a holistic being.
Yeah.
And that is what I've experienced from most of the counselors that I've been to that have been spiritual counselors. Now, that one that I feel was spiritual but not at the same place as what I was is quite early on in our marriage. We went to this counselor for marriage counseling, told him our story, and eventually he said, you two should never have got married. You like a square hole with a round peg. And just said, how can this guy say that? He's supposed to help us stay together and be married and happily and engaged with each other and relating to each other.
I had a client yesterday who told me exactly the same situation.
Yeah, so anyway, so we weren't on the same page.
Yeah.
And we didn't go back to him, by the way.
Oh, don't blame you. So, Frank, let's wrap up by how do you practice your spirituality today?
It's very intentional. And my spirituality is quite different to what as I said to a number of years ago. A number of years ago, I would have very easily identified myself as a Christian, but now I identify myself as a Christ follower.
Yes.
In the Bible, Christians are only mentioned twice.
In that whole thick book.
In that whole thick
Wow.
book.
Amazing.
But what was mentioned a lot more, especially in the New Testament, and that's where our faith comes from, is that the Christians, which were not known as Christians, were rather known as people of the way.
Okay.
And the people of the way of Christ.
Okay.
And that is why they became Christians, because they were people of the way of Christ.
Okay.
So I identify myself now more as a person of the way of Christ.
Cool.
And his way is love. So when very religious and very lawful people came and asked Jesus, so what is the greatest commandment? I mean, that is in the whole Bible. What is the greatest commandment? Because they had all these laws that they adhere to and they wanted everybody to adhere to. And Jesus said, the most important, love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength. And the second one, which is equal to that, love your neighbor as yourself. So the whole Bible, I believe, can be summed up by that one commandment.
Cool.
Be in loving relationship.
Was it Richard John Smith that sang the song, love thy neighbor like you love yourself? Oh,
Maybe,
love
I
thy
sound
neighbor,
familiar.
love you. I remember, I think we had the record as a child. And I knew every word to that song. And I loved it. It's such a catchy tune as well. And how do you practice that?
So that is what I am trying to do. So we are following a certain program which is called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality.
Okay.
And what it is doing is, or what the author says, is that we cannot grow spiritually more than what we are emotionally mature. So my spiritual journey at the moment is to become emotionally mature.
Okay.
So that I can become spiritually mature. And spiritually mature means I can love well. So I want to become emotionally mature so that I can love well.
Oh, cool.
So I do daily meditations. I read scripture, I pray, and I try to engage with people, not in a religious way, but in a relational way. And if I can express love in some way to that person, and acceptance and grace, I'd prefer to do that. Much rather than saying, you should have done this, or you should have done that, or you shouldn't have done this that way. So that is my journey at the moment.
Awesome.
The greatest challenge is doing that with my wife, as I said before.
Yeah.
But that is the challenge, and that is what both of us are busy working towards, is loving each other well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I love
so
this.
much,
This is
Freddie.
awesome. Thank you very, very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
I will, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, thank you for having me, Freddie.
Awesome. Thank you
you
so much.
Thank you.
I am so happy that Frank agreed to talk to us. I understand him as a person so much better now and feel much closer to him. I respect his commitment to his sense of spirituality and am beyond grateful that he came to share the love with us today. If you want to know more about what I do, please feel free to connect with me on my website, which is www.freddie.org.za, or find me on Facebook at either Meet Me in the Field, or Freddie Counselor, or Freddie van Rensburg, or on Twitter at Rensburg Freddie, or Instagram at Freddie Counselor. Remember that Freddie is always spelled with an IE at the end. If you feel you have a spiritual journey to share with us, please contact me. I would love to hear your story. I'm currently working on a new idea, and I'm looking for someone who has taken the Hajj or any other significant physical spiritual journey to come and talk to us. If you have done something like that and are willing to share your experience with us, I shall greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure the other Meet Me in the Field listeners will too. I want to thank Frank for his time and for sharing his views with Meet Me in the Field. Thank you for listening. Be safe. Bye.